This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Welcome into another 3 Mile Pod. I am your host, Cole Manbeck, joined by Derek Young of KSO on the On3 Network, who covers the Wildcats, publisher and editor over at KSO, and we are here to take a deep sigh of relief and talk about something very positive that happened over the last 12 hours as Kansas State head men's basketball coach Jerome Tang announced on Friday evening that he is remaining the head coach at Kansas State. The Wildcats defeat Arkansas and hold them off to retain their head coach as Jerome Tang says no to the Razorbacks and says yes to stay in Manhattan with the Wildcats. And just a huge deal for Kansas State with the momentum that they had on the recruiting trail and obviously all the success that Jerome Tang has had. And we're going to talk about what transpired over this last 24 hours, the relief now of Jerome Tang staying in Manhattan, what it means as always. But first, we got to tell you again about our friends over at Holiday Distillery. And this is the perfect time to talk about Holiday Distillery because I was having a couple glasses of Ben Holiday Bottled and Bond Bourbon, which you can find at Holiday Distillery. You can find in your local liquor stores. If they don't have it, tell them to get it. It's all over in the liquor stores up here in Olathe where I live. Ben Holiday Bottled and Bond Bourbon. It's a little early for DY and I to toast a glass this morning to celebrate as we're recording this Saturday morning. But you could toast a glass tonight. Hopefully you toasted a glass last night to celebrate the good news. Jerome Tang remaining in Manhattan. DY, why don't you just, to start kick things off, talk about what the roller coaster ride has been for you the last 24 hours covering all of this.
Yeah, it's been something else. Going into Arkansas, having a coaching search as it just begun when Eric Musselman took the USC job. The impressions I was getting was that Jerome Tang and Arkansas wouldn't be, wouldn't necessarily exchange much dialogue. There wouldn't be a ton of interest, whether that was going to be in Tang or in Arkansas. And then I think fast forward another 12 to 16 hours after that, it became clear that Arkansas wanted to interview Jerome Tang, and it became clear that Jerome Tang wanted to listen, and his agent, I think, even notified Gene Taylor that was going to be the case. So there was a lot of transparency and an open line of communication. Everything was done very professionally in nature from what I gathered. So he went through that process, and then obviously things kind of looked a bit dire when Jerome Tang actually interviewed, not just listened, he actually interviewed. And basically, hours later, you hear about Chris Beard not necessarily being in consideration anymore, whether that was him or Arkansas deciding to go to a different route. So then you had a few hours there where you felt like things were pretty dicey. There was not a lot of confidence. I think communication not broke down, but it became a little bit more sparse, probably to have space to kind of decipher and discern what you really want to do, right? If you're Jerome Tang. And then it started to pick back up, and that's when confidence kind of started to soar gradually throughout the day, late afternoon, early evening. And you hear that Kansas State and Gene Taylor had pulled a lot of strings, turned in a lot of favors, I think, too, and basically tried to assemble some kind of, what do you call it, a counter offer of sorts that would be hard for him to refuse. And ultimately it was, but again, I don't think this was ever about money. That has been stressed to me repeatedly, although I think they're all getting a little bit more money out of this. Obviously, I think it was more about, what I understand, the assurances, that what happened between Richard Linton and the basketball program will not unfold again. I think that was, a big factor in all this. And I think they at least heard something or were convinced on that front as well by Gene Taylor, who deserves a lot of credit for the way that he navigated this process. So it felt long, but it was actually kind of a sprint, which probably was good for both Kansas State and Arkansas, to be honest, to kind of know where they stand and what they need to do. But yeah, it was not about money. I think it was more about process, assurances, And I think it was about Gene Taylor being a terrific athletic director, for one, and a lot about the people in Jerome Tang's orbit, whether that be his family, his staff, the people that, what he lives life with every day. I think you could even tell by the reactions that some of them put out on Friday evening that this was the decision that Jerome Tang made was the decision that they wanted him to make as well.
I think we got the sense from talking to a variety of different people yesterday that much of the staff and people close to Jerome Tang wanted to remain at Kansas State. So completely echo that. I also wanted just to address what you brought up about, Richard Linton in that situation, DY, because, you've hinted at this before in text to us. So I don't know if you want to speak to it, but I thought Tim Fitzgerald outlined things in a really nice video. Tim Fitzgerald to Go Power Cat, where he said that recently a new system's also been put in place at Kansas State with handling rosters that doesn't involve the university president, and it provides some insulation from that for Jerome Tang and the Kansas State Athletics. Have you heard anything on that front? Anything you want to speak to in regards to that?
Nothing new, but obviously I think that was something that they were seeking. I don't know if, from a legislative, aspect, I don't know if anything can actually be written into anything or modified. I think some of that you get into the weeds a little bit and I don't necessarily know what they have the ability and capability to do. What I do know is, and like I said, nothing necessarily new, but a few months ago, it had been explained to me by a really good source, by the way, that they were working on, I don't know if you would call it a change in policy or, I'll just say what you kind of said and what Tim Fitzgerald kind of said, some sort of insulation barrier of sorts. I don't know how it works in practice. I don't know how you implement it or, I don't know all the details that are going into this, but I think it's just, I guess I would call it like relief or, or confidence of some kind to Jerome Tang that, that there's not going to be any kind of obstruction that he's not necessarily approving of. I don't know what to actually call it. But I guess it's positive enough that he's staying with Kansas State.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know all the details there, but I assume there's some sort of assurances that the meddling and interference in the program from the university president were given to Jerome Tang, that would no longer be an issue, because we knew that was a hot button topic. Look, the thing that we consistently kept hearing, all of us, through a variety of different sources over the last 24 hours, this was not about money, like you said, DY. Now, I'm sure the money helped, but this was more about the situation that had unfolded with Richard Linton and then doing that second interview. And there were some reasons for the hurt feelings, like it or not. I mean, they were upset about that second interview that he did with the Manhattan Mercury and the story that published there, and deservedly so. They had all agreed that they would not talk about or speak to that again, and that came forward. And so there was some sensitivity there. But, now they are moving forward. And, the money that Kansas State gave, because Jerome Tang is getting a salary bump, and I believe will be in the top 20 in the country. We don't have the contract details. I don't believe Kansas State is going to send out a release on this. We'll probably still get the contract details at some point. Don't know if it extended years. Don't know what it did to the buyout at this point. What we do know is we have a general sense of what the dollar amount is, and believe that it'll bump Jerome Tang into the top 20 in the country in terms of salary. His assistants are going to get a bump as well. There was an increase in the salary pool for the Kansas State assistant coaches as well and the support staff. So I think that was a critical piece as well. But I think the money, one way just to show the appreciation to Jerome Tang and try to convince him here, was to pulling together that strong counteroffer that Kansas State presented yesterday. We know that Gene Taylor and a lot of folks in the Kansas State athletic department worked night and day. They moved rocks to make this thing work. And to me, the money and the actions that Gene Taylor and Kansas State took, DY, were just to show Jerome Tang how much they value him, how much they appreciate him, and they want him to stay in Manhattan. And so I certainly think the money is a nice add-on here. And I don't know, Gene Taylor, I mean, what else can we say about it? I mean, we've got to build that guy a statue. Just maybe on that front, just speak to Gene Taylor and the job and how impressed you are with what he has done, DY, over the last several years.
He's navigated 3 huge deals really in a short time period. And I say huge deals, they were massive, right? Probably 4 of, there was other big stuff that's happened in Kansas State school history, obviously kind of revamping the basketball program by hiring Bob Huggins is up there. Hiring Bill Snyder being, A1 back in 1989. Those 2 things really stick out. But those 2 things stick out over time, like decades, and we're still saying that. I think Gene Taylor's done multiple things that you might be able to point to as well, right? Like that's the one in 1989. The AD, Steve Miller, he's not the one that hired Bob Huggins. So Steve Miller's the one that hired Bill Snyder, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then who hired Bob Huggins?
Tim Weiser hired Bob Huggins.
Okay,
yeah.
Not the same ED. I think Gene Taylor's got 2 things that is going to, or maybe more than that, is going to carry well over time. And you say, well, who did that? It'll be like Gene Taylor. Oh, who did that? It'll be like Gene Taylor. That's why I'm saying he is quickly ascended himself into, the stratosphere right now in Kansas State athletics history, in my opinion, because the delicacy and the trickiness to move on from Bill Snyder, I think that's huge, because as great as Bill Snyder is, that thing was starting to get a little, and your program is becoming antiquated, and you are in real need to break that, or you were going to head somewhere where maybe it would be very difficult to come back from. The modernizing the program a little bit. He does that while, for the most part, I think, being able to move forward where there's not a lot of hurt feelings too, for the most part. There's always going to be a few. Where Bill Snyder is still closely tied to the Kansas State football program. So he was able to do what needed to be done without damaging anyone's relationship beyond repair. And I think that's pretty valuable, and you'll look back on that as being monumental, in my opinion. And you follow that up with hiring his replacement, being the one that becomes the first coach other than Bill Snyder to both win a Big 12 championship and a bowl game. And the bowl game thing doesn't seem like a big deal. It's kind of crazy, right? He became only the second coach in Kansas State history to win a bowl game. So those are 2 just huge ordeals. And then hiring a basketball coach, I think, as good as Jerome Tang. Maybe the hiring of Jerome Tang in general won't be something that is transcended over time. But the fact that you keep him when you could have lost him, and then maybe he goes on to do something huge, like, go to a Final Four or win a Big 12 title, then that becomes a transcendent thing. So I could look right now at just 2 or 3 different things that Gene Taylor has done that is basically going to be seen as, I don't know, transcendent's the right word, but massive and program changing at the time.
I want to expand on that, but first we'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more about, Gene Taylor, the job he's done, and then also just how significant he was with keeping Jerome Tang in Manhattan. First, as always, got to tell you about our friends over at Home Field Apparel. Go to homefieldapparel.com. Check them out. Score 15% off when you go to checkout with discount code 3MAW23. They have a ton of K-State items over on their website, more than 50 items stocked up that you can go check out. They had their new latest drop about a month ago with K-State items, about another 11 or 12 items placed on their website. And their new drop, they got the basketball warm-up shirt that's awesome. Tons of hoodies, retro logos, sleek gear, super comfortable. Their hoodies are some of the most comfortable that I ever wear. They also dropped a few hats, really retro, cool-looking hats. I know DY said a couple of those were his favorite items as well. We're going to have to get our hands on those. So go check them out. Go to homefieldapparel.com. Enter discount code 3MAW23 when you check out, and you'll score 15% off.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest-ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
Before we jump into talking a little bit more about Jerome Tang, the contract extension in Manhattan, the new contract, and Gene Taylor as well, it's time for John Kurtz's favorite ad read. Unfortunately, John's not here to read this, so he actually truly loves it. This episode is brought to you by the spring cleaning champions, Manscaped. This season, make sure to groom your carpets and the drapes with the leaders and below-the-waist grooming. Clear out that winter bush with Manscaped's Lawnmower 5.0 and watch your confidence bloom. Like the springtime flowers, embrace the season and join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with our special offer. Go to manscaped.com and use code KCSN. You'll score 20% off and you'll get free shipping with the code KCSN. Comes in a really nice package right here. Here is the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra that Manscaped generously sent our way. Really appreciate the fine folks over at Manscaped. Enter discount code KCSN, score 20% off, get free shipping. The Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, it's their 5th generation trimmer, features 2 interchangeable next-gen skin-safe blade heads, a standard one for taking a little off the top, a new foil blade to go smooth wherever your heart desires. It also features an LED spotlight. There's a dual light on it, kind of a dim, a brighter light to guide you through the darkest winter debris. Navigate your confidence in your delicate areas with the Manscaped 5.0 Ultra. Go check it out. Go to manscaped.com. Score 20% off with free shipping as well with the discount code KCSN. That's 20% off and free shipping with code KCSN at manscaped.com. Nothing like a little spring cleaning in your pants. All right. We transition back to Gene Taylor. DY, you talked about the delicate conversations that he's had behind the scenes and the tough situations he's had to navigate. Jerome Tang in his announcement video, like we got wind about 30 minutes before the official announcement came from Jerome Tang last night that he was staying, and word obviously started to leak on Twitter. It moved quickly, and then Jerome Tang put a video out, around a 20-second video with some music being played, pictures of him at Kansas State. And the last 2 pictures, I don't think it's any coincidence. It was him and Gene Taylor at the press conference together, being hired when he hired him, and then hugging at midcourt at the NCAA tournament. I mean, what do you think the significance of just Gene Taylor's presence meant in Jerome Tang staying in Manhattan? And do you think there's any coincidence with the fact that Tang's announcement included those pictures with Gene?
Yeah, and no pictures of Linton. He probably didn't have any. It's something to consider. I didn't think about it in a storybook kind of poetic fashion. Maybe it was. Those two are certainly close, and they grew closer through this entire ordeal with the university president.
Yeah, just a huge shout out to Gene. I think everybody recognizes he's one of the best athletic directors in the country. We have a great deal of appreciation for him, and everybody else has noticed over the past year with everything that he has done. And, to beat out Arkansas here, DY, I mean, Arkansas's got a lot of money. I mean, let's be honest here. Walmart, Tyson Foods, etc. They had a large NIL package for Eric Musselman when he was the head coach there early on, especially. They were giving kids a ton of money. Their NIL resources were great. They're in the SEC. Bud Walton Arena is one of the largest basketball arenas in the country. They have a fan base that's very passionate. Like, you watch Arkansas games, they pack that place. I think that place seats like 17, 18,000, maybe even 20K at Bud Walton Arena. It's a good job. Like, Arkansas is a top 25 basketball job, in my opinion, with the resources that they have. And yet Kansas State defeated them in an offer they presented to Jerome Tang. I mean, just how impressed are you that K-State was able to beat Arkansas here with keeping Jerome Tang in Manhattan?
It's impressive considering, where you would kind of put Kansas State on that, hierarchy. And a willingness to expand resources and then utilize them in this way too. That makes you start to, ascend up the ladder of programs too. Because you're just showing a bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger commitment to being competitive on the basketball court. But it's also true on the football field. I know we kind of had this discussion a little bit off air, but excuse me, Kansas State all of a sudden has, they were very, very, very fiscally conservative, I think, in the past, and had a reputation of doing that and not necessarily wanting to take financial risks and gambles, even if it meant, retaining certain, figures. But they seem to be breaking from that, because in the past, what would you say, 3 years, they've shown a willingness to do whatever it takes to keep guys like Chris Kleiman and Jerome Tang. And let's be honest, those two in both of their respective sports have been one of the 5 to 10 most sought after coaches when a search begins. And Kansas can say that too. Lance Leipold right up there. There's a reason. Now, I think people just say, well, it's just agents tossing hats into the ring. Sometimes that's the case. There's a reason why Lance Leipold and Chris Kleiman are associated with every single opening. Some of it is probably, negotiation 101 for your current job. But a lot of it is they're just that good at coaches to where they make sense for any opening because they belong, at the highest level, right? And that's why their names get associated more, for the most part, first and foremost. And the same thing is with Jerome Tang. And it takes a lot of financial resources and a lot of commitment to keep those guys in tow. And Kansas State has shown a willingness and an appetite, a growing desire, and a big want to in terms of doing whatever it takes to keep those guys.
They're operating in some more unique ways just to make things happen, and operating like a program that wants to be top 25 caliber, both football and basketball, year in and year out. I mean, it is so impressive when you think about what Kansas State has done over the last 12, 13 years, $300+ million in facility projects and enhancements on the athletic side, largely funded by private donations of folks. And now they have NIL packages for basketball that's among the top 15, 20 in the country. They're paying Jerome Tang a salary that's top 20 in the country. Chris Kleiman's getting a very competitive salary as well. K-State has shown a commitment to winning over the last several years here. And to me, with this contract extension, I shouldn't call it an extension. We don't know if years were added on. New contract for Jerome Tang. Kansas State has shown to Jerome Tang how serious they are about being a top-tier basketball program and competing for championships, because they're paying him a salary that's going to be in the top 20 in the country, and they have an NIL package that's going to be among the top 20 in the country. Everybody has stepped forward here, so I think that is significant. The other thing, DY, that I was going to ask you, like having to go through this, and this will be my last question on the topic, but going through this situation and what was a really tumultuous, anxious last 24 to 36 hours, could this end up being a blessing in disguise, for the long term of keeping Jerome Tang in Manhattan? Because maybe you address some areas that could have come up again in a year or so, and now maybe they've got out in front of those with this new contract and some of the situations, some of the things that they've addressed here.
It's possible if it's a good year, right? Both on the court and then off the court, if you avoid some of the things that, maybe brought them to this point, right? So it's possible, maybe even more than possible, that you can easily navigate it going forward. Just from a resource standpoint, like you just rattled it off in terms of head coach salary, assistant salary, facilities, resources, everything that they seem to think that they need in front of them to win a national championship at Kansas State, they have been given. And it can be matched in some places. It cannot be exceeded in a lot. Like if a Duke or a Kentucky comes and says, that's our guy, then you're probably in a new area of where you need to get if you want to keep him, obviously. But would I feel better moving forward? Yeah, because they took some big steps, I think, throughout this process to make sure it landed where they wanted it to land, probably both sides. But an example I will use that you just never know, because it's like, well, if you get past Arkansas, you can probably get past a lot of schools. I felt that way for Colin Klein as well. If you get past Notre Dame, you feel like you can get past a lot of schools. Well, then he got past Penn State and got past a couple other ones. I think that's not really publicized. So it's like, if you get past all these, you can probably do it. Couldn't get past Texas A&M because they gave him a combination of a lot of things that maybe he desired. Chief among them might be coaching and recruiting in Texas and getting the lay of that land, because he thinks it could be a boon to him in the future when he's a head coach. So you just never know, because I thought that about Colin Klein. Like, if you pass Notre Dame, Penn State, what's Texas A&M? Well, Texas A&M got him. So you just never know.
Yeah. We got this question, just a couple more and we'll wrap here, DY. We got this question on our Discord at patreon.com/3mall, which, by the way, we had a couple live shows last night, one right before the good news broke and then a live show after it. The Discord was hopping, super active. So if you're over there, go check it out, patreon.com/3mall, just $5 a month for bonus content on top of everything we're doing at KCSN. Could this help them on the recruiting trail? Like, it's not going to hurt them, obviously, but we got this question, like, could this give them some momentum on the recruiting trail? And I think one benefit is that this happened during this 48 hours where there were noise and questions. It happened during a dead period. So that's kind of a blessing in disguise as well. But what about recruiting at this point going forward, as we know they have a hefty NIL package and attacking the transfer portal? Where do things stand on that front?
It was already in a great place. I'd imagine maybe that they'll try to use this to give them an even bigger jolt. But I would describe it as I thought that they were going to hit a home run on the recruiting trail and the transfer portal before this happened. I thought it was going to be a disaster if they left. It would have lost Doug, would have lost probably most of your roster, if not all. And you wouldn't have any targets, and you'd just be searching for a coach and be without it. And then he stayed, and then all the stuff I felt before returned, maybe even more so, right? Because you can try to get a jolt out of this. But anything that they are able to accomplish afterwards, I think they were already going to accomplish it before. So the whole jolt that I'm speaking about is probably a little bit overrated in that aspect. But it's never good to have it's never a bad thing to have a good news cycle.
Yeah. And the dead period for recruiting runs through April 4th through April 11th. So starting next Friday, things open back up. Kids can visit. There's a short window there where kids can visit on campus. You can go out and visit kids as well. But yeah,
I'd project, I don't really know. So don't take this as me like implying that I know something. I don't, but I would imagine that weekend after April 11th, they'll have a visitor or two on campus.
I would anticipate that as well. They're after some big-time targets right now, and I think they feel like they're in a pretty good spot on a couple of them. So that'll be a big weekend starting next Friday, and K-State fans can breathe a sigh of relief. Reminder as well to, NIL is a big deal right now, and let's keep the momentum and the good vibes going. Go over to catsnil.com and sign up for the membership program. Wildcat NIL just announced on Twitter earlier this morning on Saturday that they're at 625 members. They exceeded the 600 member threshold. So as part of that paid program, so now a $250,000 gift from an anonymous donor was given to Wildcat NIL as a result of hitting 600 members. They got a $100,000 gift for hitting 500 members from an anonymous donor. So that's $350,000 in gifts that have been reached so far. They're at 625 members as we're recording this and counting. And when they reach 750 members, they will get a $500,000 gift from an anonymous donor to Wildcat NIL. So go check out all the different membership tiers. You can join for as low as $10 a month. You can choose whichever option fits your needs, what's best for you. Go check catsnil.com. Curry Sexton, you guys love him. He's great on our show. We have a great deal of appreciation for Curry, for Ryan Hennington, for Pearson McAtee, for all the work those guys are doing. They're former student athletes at K-State. They care so much about the Wildcats' success, and they're working their tails off. So go support Wildcat NIL at catsnil.com. Check them out and support them. Also support Home Field Apparel, 3Mall23 discount code to check out, score 15% off. Check out the K-State items there. Go out to Holiday Distillery, check out your local liquor store as well. Buy some Ben Holiday bottled and bond bourbon or 360 vodka from the great folks at Holiday Distillery. And go check out manscaped.com, discount code KCSN, score 20% off, and also get free shipping. Appreciate you, DY. We appreciate Gene Taylor and Jerome Tang for getting this done and staying in Manhattan. There's going to be a lot of fun things to talk about over the ensuing weeks on 3 Mall. Stay on the lookout for that. Stay in tune with us because we're going to have a ton of coverage coming your way with K-State transfer portal stuff, updates on the recruiting front, and updates on spring football with Kansas State. Thanks all. Appreciate you listening to another episode of 3 Mall.